Says we're live. Looks like we're live. Should have like a 10-second delay over on YouTube. I think we're more live on Twitch, but hey,
where will I find it live? Where will I find it live on? Because I'm on the Sneaker.
So it should pop up now on twitch.com/sneakerhistory or sneaker. Yeah, we're live on Twitch and then YouTube/sneakerhistory. Cool. Anyway, thanks to everybody for tuning in. Sneaker Convos, also known as something else prior to this morning when we got a fun little email. But I'm Nick Engvall. I host a Sneaker History podcast, the Outside the Box podcast. I've been in the sneaker thing for a really long time. And I just like putting together some stuff for the community. And my friend Joe here, who you can see, helps bring this together. Basically, we had a conversation a few months back now and just said, hey, after CES and having some fun conversations with people about collaborations and agency work, we just kind of started kicked out the idea of, hey, let's do a sneaker conversation series. So it's now called Sneaker Convos. We've got probably, I think the last count, we have 30 panels, live podcasts, conversations, interviews from now until Saturday around 3:30 Eastern time. So it's going to be a fun few days. But how's life in New York, Joe?
It is a lot chillier than it was last week, which is a real bummer because we really thought we were going to get a early spring. So anybody that's on from New York knows what I'm talking about because we actually saw some snowflakes today, but it was like in the mid 60s. But listen, back to, the change in name. This is, one of yours and my like favorite weeks, or usually is, at South by Southwest. And, they were the inspiration. We're doing this content side by side. We have zero affiliation with South by Southwest. Initially, we were going to call it South by Sneakers, but they weren't too happy with that, and so that's not its name anymore. We'll just call it North by Sneakers next year, and whatever. But so I think that what it's important for people to understand is like, it's the idea of this, and we had some panels for my agency during CES, which was also not part of CES. We just kind of ran them kind of in parallel with the content that was going on at CES. And we were able to have some fun conversations that week because people are looking for content. And I think that that's what people are looking for content this week about the industry, being media, being music, being culture in general. So we said, hey, listen, why don't we have some content that week? I'm assuming that most of the people on this, aren't really that familiar with South by Southwest and or might not have ever been. Its heyday was really over a decade ago. It's kind of become something much different, moving forward, where the media kind of companies kind of took it over and basically started a whole nother week for it before the music even got started. But definitely some of my best memories of my life are going to day parties at South by Southwest and just running around Austin. So at some point, like you'd said, we're, whether it be Austin, whether it be somewhere, we're hoping to do this live and in person because we want to just have conversations about sneakers, about kind of streetwear, about the culture around it, not necessarily, the products completely, but kind of all the cool people that work in the industries, really kind of talking about who some of these people are and some of the cooler things that they're doing as content creators. And more importantly, kind of as like, as people who are trying to give back to the community, whatever community that be, but, starting with your, with your local community, and then on out, but really hoping that we can have a lot of those types. We're going to hopefully see people have a lot of those type conversations this week because, I think it's a great opportunity to meet cool people and to get involved with potentially cool projects and since I've been listening to all the sneaker podcasts for the last couple of years, I've heard, all of you guys do really cool things around giving back. And I think that that's one of the things that is going to be the themes of this week that I'm really excited to kind of hear what people have to say.
Yeah, man. It's interesting because I feel the same way in the sneaker thing as probably you do, right? Like there's so much going on, on the media side and the music business and, just culture in general, right? And I think we all, as much as it's hard to admit, we're all a part of the problem of big businesses becoming a part of it, because we all want to somehow work with those big businesses and create opportunities for ourselves, for others, and all that stuff. But inevitably, it shifts a lot of the dynamic, and then you end up getting this bubble up of negativity. And one of the things, like you said about these conversations over the next few days, I hope let people know just how good the people are behind the scenes of all of these things, whether that's, the people that are creating content that you already see on camera, or the people behind the scenes that are building websites or creating content for businesses or running bots or, building communities. All of these things are just pieces of the bigger puzzle to me, that right now there's just kind of there's a frustrating energy around sneakers for a lot of reasons. And I think that, for me, it was just like, how can we, I was so excited that you asked me to be a part of the CES thing, because honestly, as somebody who prior to sneakers worked in electronics and cellular for a long time, it was something that I just thought, oh man, this is a great way for me to feel involved in something that I had never gotten to really be involved in, before. And then it just kind of made sense to try to do this and create something where we can kind of give people something good and hopefully get people come in to do things good for the community and raise everybody up. So I'm super stoked for this.
I think I'll say one last thing before you intro these guys, because they're like all these guys that are doing this podcast next, or they're doing this panel next, the Canada panel, What the Canada, it was kind of a silly name that we came up with for it, and asked them to do it. But like, I absolutely love listening to these guys. They're complete sweethearts. They're always saying really, really nice things. They're everything that I think is good about the sneaker community. And they've formed such a unique community kind of that is cross borders. And, I was writing to them the other day. They're so nice. I've never even once heard them use the word hoser on any of these podcasts. And I just grew up thinking that, watching Strange Brew, thinking that everybody in Canada was a hoser, but these guys definitely aren't. So I'm gonna shut up and just watch and enjoy. But thank you so much to all the Canada boys. Thanks, Lawrence. I am a hoser. I'm gonna shut myself off and let you guys get to it.
Yeah. So we decided to go with the nicest group and the most friendly group to start it off, so we didn't get anybody upset here. And I'm going to introduce Sean Go, Chris Chu, Sean Collard, Lawrence Hopkins, John Ratner, and Alvin Quincy to take over for the next hour or so. Guys, it's all yours.
Thanks, Nick. Appreciate it.
We're going to ruin our reputation right off the bat, aren't we?
Oh, my God.
Nice Canada talk.
Everyone's Googling hoser right now. What does that mean?
Everyone's Googling Canada right now.
Hosers.
Hoser. Thanks, Nick. And first of all, before anything, thanks, Nick and Joe, for putting this together. When they reached out, we were pretty gung-ho from the beginning. It's pretty exciting to be a part of something like this. We think it's really good for the community, and we're just excited to be, first of all, alongside names like Nick Engvall. Like, holy shit, that's already cool. I don't know if we're allowed to swear, but I already did 3 seconds in. And other names, like on other panels, there's some great other Canadian related panels throughout the week, so definitely go check that stuff out. And there's just some other incredible names on other panels, so make sure you check out the rest of the week. But so this is, as they titled it, the What the Canada panel. As you may have guessed from the name, the panel is going to be dedicated to Canadian content creation, specifically related to the realm of podcasting. As we all 6 of us are on various podcasts, we're going to talk about what got everyone into podcasting, the benefits of having a podcast as a platform for creating, how we deliver to our audience, and we'll probably go off topic as we already have several times in between. So hopefully you're ready for that. I'm going to be one of your co-hosts for the panel today. My name is Lawrence Hopkins. I am one of the co-founders of Canada Got Soul and host of the True to Size podcast. And my other host is up to my left. I don't know if it's the same for everybody, but Chris Chu, what's up?
My left. Yes, thanks, Lawrence. My name is Chris Chu. I am one of the co-hosts of the Sneaker podcast. So let's just get right into the introductions. We have Sean Collard joining us. He is a Jordan aficionado, source for anything Jumpman, one of my co-hosts on the Sneaker podcast. What's up, Sean Collard?
What's up, guys? Good to be here. So happy to be here.
Next up, we have Sean Go. He's an accomplished photographer, big-time YouTuber.
Oh.
And
Not bad.
he is the host and creator of the Channel 8 podcast. What's up, Sean?
How's it going?
Very good. Everything's
Honored
good.
to be here.
Oh, honors all ours.
Oh my God, for real. So the other two panelists you see below those two, we've got Girl Dad, the other co-founder of Canada Got Soul, member of the True to Size podcast and Traffic Boys podcast, Alvin Quincy Martinez. What's going on, my bro?
Hey now.
You're an
Oh
all-star.
man, he stole an intro.
Oh my God! Right off the bat, stealing.
And finally, he's a collector of all things dope, originator of the Wear Everything movement, and host of the Sneaker Dads podcast, Mr. John Ratner. Heads ain't ready. What's going on, John?
What's going on? Happy to be here.
Amazing. So, we're just gonna get right into this. As we mentioned before, we are all on different podcasts, as we just introduced. So we're just gonna start it light and just really generally discuss what got us into podcasting to begin with. Just to kind of lay a ground layer before we get into this. So we'll start with the True to Size boys, myself included, but we'll throw it to Alvin. Why podcasting? Why did you/we start getting into podcasting in the first place?
I mean, for us, it was just something we wanted to do just to add on to the content that we already create. It was also another venue to kind of showcase other things within our sneaker lives, because as much as we can showcase, our pickups, talk about new things that are coming up, I felt like a podcast was a better outlet for that, because it allowed us to actually voice our opinions and, do all that amazing stuff. And honestly, it's been fun, man. It just turned into like a weekly thing that we did. And honestly, it's just been, I don't know what I would do now without it, just because I'm used to it. I love it. And it's fun being able to connect with everyone who listens to it.
Yeah, 100%. Just to echo and finish off that thought, I think that you get a lot of different variety within podcasting. Like our first kind of venture outside of Instagram was to like a blog, a written blog. And I think that the freedom you have with a podcast and the more ability to reach more people and in a different way, like a more accessible way with a podcast, because you can be listened to in a car, on a run, on a walk, whatever. You can pause, pick back up. I think it's just so much more valuable than a blog, like a written blog. And I think that, it's just been overall the reason we're still doing it is because it's so much fun. But the Sneaker Podcast boys, Chris and Sean, Sean Collard, we'll make sure to specify. What was the reason that you guys got started in the podcast game?
I think Chris can speak to that, because I joined the crew about a year and a half after you guys started, I think.
Yeah, probably season 2.
Bandwagon fan.
Season 2, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We got into.
Once I joined, they took off.
We'll give him that. So we are in season 6 of our podcast. So it's been approximately 6 years that we've been doing it. We got in before the podcast boom, I guess we can say. So for us, it was just
2020.
Yes, sir. For those who don't know, in Canada, there was maybe 2 podcasts that had like more than 1 season under their belt. It was the Sneaker Podcast and the guys from True to Size. And this year, there seems to be like more podcasts popping up. And I guess because we spent 6 years doing this, we kind of seen everything. We've gone through the bad years, the years where we didn't know what we were doing, what to do with our hands. And then we incorporated YouTube at a certain point. Just to keep up with the times, and then also to keep up with everyone that's jumping onto the podcast platform. why we started podcasting was more because we were a few guys that just wanted to have a voice in some way. Not all of us did Instagram heavy. Not all of us blogged, but each of us did something a bit different, and we all got along really well. You ever have that moment when you're hanging out with your friends and you're like, this should be a television show? Well, us, it was, this should be a podcast. So we just went that way.
We don't look it enough for TV.
Right.
Valid.
Basis for
valid point.
podcasting. Yeah. And at a certain point during the podcast, we met Sean. We were in the same city. I didn't know Sean, this big time Jordan fan. Finally met him, and we were like, this guy is like the perfect fit. He guested on one of our episodes. He seemed like the perfect fit for our show. Yeah.
That's
yes,
sweet.
sir.
This is still a podcast.
And then that's why we kept going. We also had a question to the newer podcasters. So John and Sean Go, why jump into podcasting now? You guys might have different views. I know Sean Go, like we mentioned, big YouTuber in our eyes. So he already has YouTube under his belt. Why jump into podcasting?
I think for me, it was a natural progression of evolving. Like I started off being a photographer first, hated being in front of the camera, hated being recorded and everything like that. But it's just a matter of evolving, growing your content, expanding your reach, and just getting out of your comfort zone and seeing like what new things you can do and what things you can tackle and succeed in. And, you know, it's still like a very fresh. I literally started a couple months ago, and I don't even know what the future is going to be for it, but I'm having fun with it.
There you go.
It's a really different type of creating than the traditional YouTube and Instagram that I normally do. So it's fun.
Right. So it's a good compliment to your established YouTube channel.
Yeah. I think it definitely gives me like an avenue to talk about things I normally wouldn't on the other two existing platforms.
Right.
And like, I don't want to like my podcast, I don't want to focus strictly on sneakers because I have a ton of other things I'm interested in, like photography, basketball, like whatever, like things that catch my eyes, and whoever's in the community that shares that similar interest, I'd love to just kick it with them and just talk about those things.
Right. It makes sense. You have your formula down for YouTube, and this one you could be more free form.
Yeah.
John, what made you decide to get into podcasting?
Well, aside from the fact that I listen to all you guys and enjoy it, I'm a print journalist by trade, but I do also have some experience in radio and broadcast. So I felt like I had a opportunity to sort of expand my creative horizons. You know, I spend, like a lot of people, spend a lot of time focusing on sneakers, but not really necessarily being productive. So when the pandemic hit, I had a little more time on my hands, and you know, I had the idea years ago, and I never really did anything about it. But the pandemic definitely kickstarted me. And really, for me, it's all about storytelling. I love telling my stories, but more importantly, I love letting people tell their stories. So if you listen to the podcast, I kind of let people go off and get into those stories and tell us why that they're passionate about sneakers and other things, like Sean mentioned, that a little bit expanded on it, because it's not only about sneakers.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that you've been thinking about it for a few years. Did you have in your journalistic brain tons of questions, you know, pent up, and you were like ready to release them all once you started getting like guests on your podcast?
Well, I actually wanted to do it in studio. I've had a vision of doing it downtown Toronto and having, you know, people when they come through, all you guys, but also people from out of town. And that pretty much that plan hit the skids pretty early in the dream. But it was really just, you know, not doing it. It's getting off my ass and not doing it. So, you know, as with many people with the pandemic, it kind of kickstarted some creative juices. You know, as you mentioned, podcasts have boomed a little bit here in Canada, but elsewhere, right, and other creative opportunities too. So in a roundabout way, the pandemic kind of also made maybe the podcast avenue a bit easier, because everyone's online right now. So you going online was maybe not a blessing, but like an easier path to getting it all started. Yeah, I think everyone could agree that, you know, the opportunity to go global. I know the guys at Canada Got Soul have had people from across the ocean and things like that, you know, maybe you wouldn't have thought of. You guys had guests before, and, you know, but the, you know, thinking more globally, because you kind of have to, and you're on Zoom all day anyway.
So to Sean Go and John, when you guys looked at the different social media platforms that you could get into and the different channels, was there something about podcasting that made you guys say, I think I can jump into the pool and swim with these other guys? Not that we're sharks.
Yeah.
But
Hopefully you can swim.
Yeah, I think as long as you have like a genuine passion and genuine love for that subject, I think whatever podcast you create, that genuineness will show, right, in your content. And the barriers to entry to get into podcasting is relatively low. Like for me, I hit you up and I said, like, what's your setup? And then
I asked for my blessing.
Yep.
No. You didn't hit me up.
Don't need your blessing, man. I'm sorry.
sorry.
Yeah.
Pardon me, Sean. Go.
Nick, how do I leave?
Yo, Chris is starting. But yeah, like I hit up Chris and I just asked him like, what kind of mic does he use? What does he use to record? And it was just a matter of plugging it in and just starting.
Right. I remember that call. It was great. John.
I think the best advice anyone gave me when I was thinking of starting a podcast, when I was asking people, about technical issues, platforms, and things like that, was just do it. And I think that's a lot of a lot of things in life. You just got to take the plunge. You have an idea, you got to be willing to fail. You got to be willing to make mistakes. I had audio problems in a lot of my earlier podcasts and things like that. And you just have to do it. If you're passionate about it, it'll come through and people will listen. It'll happen slowly most of the time. But, as long as you care about what you do, and I think we all do, and I know we all do, and that's really what comes across and makes you believe in it. I think that's the same thing with anything.
Right. I think that just before we move on, I think that's something to take from all of that. If you're thinking about starting a podcast, because I've had several people hit me up as well, and not including Sean Go, obviously, but other more intelligent people have hit me up, and all I've told them was, honestly, like Sean said, the barrier to entry is so low. You literally don't even need a microphone. That you can just use a pair of string pods, not AirPods, because the audio sucks on those, and get going. Like you can record it onto your phone and just post it. So if you're thinking about doing it, just do it. That's the main thing that I would say.
On that note, though, I do want to ask Sean Collard. I know we've chatted about this before. You are also part of a group called the OGSG, the OG Support Group on Instagram. And you guys have tons of stories to tell about sneakers. And we've talked about possibly starting a podcast, you guys starting a podcast. Was there a reason why you guys decided to hold off versus...
It's almost the flip of what everybody else's experiences was, because I think when COVID hit, we almost went into hibernation between even from our posting on our Instagram page, and then we were talking about starting a podcast, and then it felt like there was this wave of new podcasts coming through, specifically here in Canada, which is weird. But there was, and so we almost thought, well, I don't want to like get lost in the whole wave of podcasts coming out. So maybe we'll put it off maybe to summer or something like that way. Things might calm down so that we can maybe have our voices be heard a bit more. But we do. I think we have I think the way we come at it is the same, or the way we would go at it is the same way we operate our page, and that's just we just put out content that we like on our page. We don't really we're not trying to tailor make what we do to a specific audience. So I think from when we started the OG Sport Group page, we were very adamant about making things as organic as possible, and keeping true to what we love to share, and what we do, all the stuff that we would talk about in our chats. We want to somehow put that out into the world. So I think if moving forward, if we were to do a podcast, that's kind of what the vibe we would want to create.
Right. You don't want to force it.
Yeah, nothing forced. Yeah. I feel like if we were to do it like sort of now, it would feel forced, even though maybe it wouldn't be forced on our part. It just feel like, because there are so many podcasts coming out right now, it's crazy. It would feel like, okay, we're gonna jump into this whole wave of let's put out a podcast too. I want to feel like it's like just something that we're passionate about, and we'll get there eventually. I think we knew when the time was right to start an Instagram page, so we'll know when the time is right to do a podcast.
Right.
I think that's something also that people can take if they're interested about honestly creating any content in general, is make sure it's authentic and it's actually you. Don't do it for any other reason than because you want to, and it's because it's you, because it'll show in the people who interact with your content. It needs to be something that makes sense for you and the brand that you want to build. And that kind of goes into what we're going to talk about next, is like, who do you kind of like market to? Like, who's your target audience when you're recording your podcast? And this may be different for everybody. And we're going to expand on it a little bit, like who actually does listen to your podcast. But like just to start it off, maybe we'll start with Sean. Go with this one. But like, who are you like talking to? Because they say when you're doing a podcast, you shouldn't be, obviously you're talking to a microphone or to the people in the same room as you, but who are you like talking to when you talk through the mic? Like, who is the target audience that you're trying to reach?
Yeah, I think it's tough because the Canadian sneaker community is pretty tight knit. We all pretty much know each other, and we pretty much consume each other's content to some degree. But from my main platform, which is YouTube, the majority of my audience is coming from the States. So with that said, when I do record the podcast, it's kind of like split 50-50. Like the stories I'm telling, a lot of the times it's locally based. So I do have to explain, like, this is Livestock is based out of Toronto. We have like Soul Stop is this store located north of Toronto, things like that. But generally speaking, it is targeted towards, I guess you can say, North America. But I do understand that the majority of my audience is probably coming from the States.
See, and that's like, even just between your podcast and our podcast, that's a massive difference. And maybe it's just us not doing a good job at podcasting or talking, but like, because our name is Canada Got Soul, and because we know that I think about 75 to 80% of our audience is within Canada. When we do something like that, we'll just say Livestock and like keep going, or we'll say Queen West and we'll just keep going, because we know that when we're like talking, and Alvin can attest to this, I think that when we're talking to people like us, like who don't take sneakers that seriously, who are just kind of honestly here for a good time. Like, I think most of the best content that we create on the podcast has nothing to do with sneakers. Like, we do have some amazing sneaker talks, but at the end of the day, like, it's always the brotherly interactions that we do have that I think are the best ones. But yeah, I think we're honestly, for us at least, it's just when I'm talking to somebody as if I'm having a conversation to them. I'm the exact same on the podcast, I think, as I would be talking to somebody in person. And I think, once again, that comes back to authenticity. But I don't know who. Sneakers of Toronto. Thank you, Sneakers of Toronto. But Alvin, what do you think? Like, when you're talking, we'll kind of go through the other podcasters as well. Who are you talking to when you're speaking through the mic?
For me, initially, it was just like the Canadian sneakerhead. But after us doing it for so long and learning that we have other sneaker family throughout the world, it's just anyone who's passionate about sneakers. And I think we do need to do a better job of explaining certain places in Canada, because we do have, other people in the world who listen. But I mean, we are Canada Got Soul. We love the world, but like, we definitely cater to our fellow Canadians. But yeah, man, like, honestly, anyone who's got a passion, and so far, anyone who's been listening, who's hit us up on Instagram, email, or whatever, you can tell they have that same kind of passion and they kind of vibe with us. And that's why they listen to us. And that's why we started in the first place, right? So
yeah, it's anyone who's on the same wavelength, same vibe, like same kind of mentality as us. It seems to be people who listen to us. Like, it's nothing serious. Like, it's nothing crazy. We're not going to usually talk about the super hype shit. Like, we just talk about, hey, we're true to size. We talk about stuff that's true to us, right? But John, what about you? Because you have kind of an interesting take on the podcasting thing. Like, your primary like backing is meant to be about sneaker dads. I know you expand into like the Wear Everything, and you have other people that are not just fathers, but like, who are you talking to, and who are you kind of trying to market to when you're recording the podcast?
Well, as you mentioned, it's not only for sneaker dads. There's a good chunk of every episode that dedicated. If I have a parent on, because I've had a sneaker mom, and I hope to have more on. There's a sort of a chunk, but some people are more or less comfortable talking about personal things when it comes to family, whether it's, actually raising a child and establishing their values and things like that, or just what kind of shoes they buy them and where they find space to put their shoes. And I interviewed someone today. He said he shares a room with his daughter, and it's toys on one side and sneakers on the other. So, it's those type of situations, but it's also people who don't want to talk about it and who just want to talk about sneakers, and they happen to be a parent. And also I have, as you mentioned, the Wear Everything, which is sort of a spin-off, because I wanted to get into people, 3 out of the 5 people here, other than me, have been on the podcast, and you guys aren't parents. Only half of us are, and you guys all participated in Wear Everything and told stories and shared your passion. So they're really not that different. There's just a little bit of that overlap, but I do want to have that sort of niche where there is that parenting and kind of family atmosphere, family vibe in those discussions. And truthfully, it can be for the Wear Everything too. We could talk about, Sean could talk about how his brother got into sneakers or something. It doesn't have to be, talking about how his, when he was a kid and his grandmother gave him, family. It could be anything. but I did see a niche.
Stalking me hardcore, I can tell.
I did see an opportunity to do that. Plus, I had the Instagram page, which was more successful than I ever thought it was. And there's a huge community of people who are just obsessed with their kids and sneakers and that whole lifestyle. So I wanted to do that, and I'm one of them.
Absolutely. And the Sneaker Podcast guys. So like right off the bat, you guys were way smarter in naming your group than Canada Got Sold, because we really limited ourselves to about 30 million people, and you guys are a lot more global behind the name. But who do you guys talk to? Maybe we'll go Sean Collard first, because Chris has spoken too much already. Sean, who are you speaking to when you're speaking through that mic? Who's your target audience for you?
Quite honestly, I think you touched on it before, Lawrence, because you guys in the Canada Got Sold boys have such a good rapport with each other, and I think Chris, myself, Mike, and Chloe have such a good rapport. I really only think about it, I'm talking to them sometimes, and I really if I can make them laugh, if I can whatever, I think our vibe is so good, and we're such a tight crew that I really don't think sometimes. I mean, obviously, I'm conscious sometimes because we have the running joke in our group is that we talk about the weather every week, and I get conscious about it when we're talking Celsius, and I think, like 70-80% of our audience is in the States. They don't know what Celsius is, but I obviously I think about it sometimes about the things that if I'm talking about Jordan stuff that maybe is like way too boring for some people, might be boring people, but if I'm talking to them, and I'm making them happy and I'm making them laugh, that's all I think about. It's like I said with the OG support group guys, I'm just putting out stuff that I would talk to them as if I would talk to anybody. So I'm not really thinking about there's an audience out there. I'm just being myself and trying to come at it from that angle.
Sean is basically saying, sorry to interrupt, Chris, that the world is his stage. He's like, I'm always on.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
Exactly. Yeah, that's it. But sorry, Chris, go ahead.
Right. On the flip side of what Sean's saying, yes, we do get comfortable. We do realize that we have like an audience that comes back and that they message us, and we have like inside jokes. And sometimes we get too wrapped up in the inside jokes. Even I think cross podcasts, we do it, right? Because we know each other so well. And every now and then we'll have to hit a reset button and think about who is actually listening. So every now and then we'll bring up a topic that is more in terms of not a tutorial, but like, what would you do in this situation if you were starting out again? Or what strategies would you have if you wanted to get into this type of sneaker? What do you look for in crewmates, in the type of content that you consume? So every now and then, like I said, we'll do a little reset. We'll do a little topic like that because, podcast is popping up in Canada, but we also have to realize that it's not just the podcasters that are popping up. It's also the podcast listeners that are coming out of the woodworks, right? So everyone's looking for content. They'll find us. And if we're too wrapped up into our inside joke, they'd be like, nah, next, And then they find True to Size podcast by Canada Got Sold.
So much better.
So much better.
Do you find that the audience you guys have is the audience you guys intended to have? Like, I know for us, at Canada Got Sold, I'm sure I can speak for Alvin as well, that just based on the name and just based on the Instagram following that we had before we started the podcast, we knew it was going to be mostly Canadians, and we still run with that. Like, I think personally, I'm perfectly fine with that. It would be really cool if we had people tuning in from all over the world, and like we said, we do. We knew our audience was going to be primarily Canadian, and I think that's what we intended going in, and that's who it is. But did it kind of live up to your guys' expectations? Like Chris and Sean, did you guys think that you guys were going to have not as many Canadians and more Americans when you guys started this?
I mean, when we started, we were just happy that
Anybody
20 people
listen?
tuned in, then 50, then 100, and we were like so gassed that, wow, we hit 100. And we never really looked at where they were listening from, right? It was new to us as well when we started it. So we didn't quite understand how to read all the stats and everything. Then we get some messages from people doing like shout outs from Australia, shout out from like Spain. Sean is huge in Spain.
Huge.
Everyone, Sean Collard, huge in Spain.
Yes.
So yeah, I don't know about you, Mr. Collard, but I'm quite surprised, and I love getting messages from people from all around the world, because it really shows that, hey man, it's a sneaker.
Yeah.
You know? Anyone
That's
can
the
love
cool,
this
and that is the coolest thing. And I have to be honest, I try not to have expectations, because I don't. You're always, if you could set yourself up for failure if your expectations are one way or another. But I think Chris nailed it there too. Is like, it's so cool when we get messages from people in like Brazil and Germany and all over, South Africa, and it's crazy to think that we're reaching that far. And it's all because, like you said, it's all because of sneakers, which is really, really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And Sean, I know you said you kind of expected the American following just based on your Sean Go. You expected the American following just based on your YouTube following. But did you like intend for it to be that way when you started your YouTube page? Or like, I know you started creating kind of just on a whim, but were you intending for it to be like an American heavy following? Did you expect it? And now, like, would you change it? Would you rather have more Canadians following you? Do you care? Like, how do you feel about it right now?
Yeah, honestly, I didn't think too much of it when I was starting up. I just wanted to create like the most authentic, genuine content that I could. Because prior to that, it was like the reason why I started this all was because I'd be looking for that similar sort of content on YouTube and Instagram and stuff like that. And I felt like there was this void in Canada specifically, and I could fill that and produce like videos that were fitting for what I was wanting to watch, right? So then I created the YouTube channel, and then it just happened like the majority of people happen to be from the States, which is cool. And then also I get messages from people in Asia, like Australia, Europe, and stuff like that. So it's really dope. Like, it just shows you if the content is quality, and if they can tell that you're coming from the right place, then it doesn't really matter what border you're recording your content from, right?
Right. You're not getting Spain though. That belongs to
no,
Sean
that's
Collard.
that's his. That's his.
Back off,
Right.
please.
I'll take England.
We've actually had people from Spain message us and say, if you don't stop podcasting, we're going to find you. Like, they're so heavily backing Sean Collard that they will actually, they will attack us from the DMs. You better stop. Only one Canadian podcast is Mucho Bueno.
Right.
And it's
add Sean to your podcast, or one of those.
Or add a Sean. We just need a Sean. I don't even know if they like Sean Collard or just any Sean.
It's just the name Sean. Yeah. That's why there are two of us on the podcast here.
There has to be a 30% Sean minimum for every So we had to make sure we hit the quota. But Alvin, what do you think? Like, I know I kind of touched on it a little bit, but like, we have the Canadian heavy podcast following. Would you change it? Like, would you prefer if it was kind of more evenly spread around the globe, or like, what are your thoughts on the audience that we did end up receiving?
I mean, obviously, it would be dope to have more of an audience around the globe. But we started Canada Got Sold to put, the Canadian sneakerheads on the map. You know what I mean? So if it's mostly Canadian sneakerheads, I'm more than happy with that. We do have sneaker family, like huge sneaker family in like the UK, Australia, down in the US of A. Like, so I mean, the fact that we've reached outside of Canada is already big enough for me. But I mean, obviously, when we started, we wanted to showcase Canadian sneakerheads, but we have sneakerheads for we have love for all sneakerheads though. So if you have the passion, we're about it. And yeah, man, I don't know. It's kind of trippy when we get DMs from Australia, and it's just like, you understand what we say, like, sick.
Like
just that heavy Canadian accent there.
Yeah.
Somebody down in the comments actually said, I'm here for the accents. And I was like mildly offended, because I obviously don't think that we have an accent at all. We think you guys have accents down there and in the States. But like what Alvin said, like, it's a shock. It's a pleasant surprise. Obviously, we don't like discourage listeners from anywhere else, but like, being named Canada Got Sold really obviously limited us in the sense that we were targeting Canada heavily. Like, if you produce good content, like you said, anyone's going to listen to it or view it or take it in. But it's always a pleasant surprise when you get people from like the UK or the States, or like you said, Australia is crazy, like a completely different hemisphere, and they're like, yo, I love this Canada Got Soul. And it's like, you said Canada, that's cool by itself. But John, what about you, just to kind of round it out? Like, do you get surprised or shocked, or like, what was your feeling when you realized like it wasn't only parents listening to the Sneaker Dads podcast?
Yeah, it's great. Some of my most loyal listeners have nothing to do with parenting. They don't even have plans to have kids. And the Wear Everything spinoff was part of that to make sure that they get that story. But I think anyone would love to hear a story about someone's wall of sneakers falling on their kid or something like that, or something like,
Oh my God.
No, like empty boxes. You know what I mean? But I didn't actually I made that one up, but might have happened this morning with my kids. My daughter was looking through, but it's like Sean said, doing something that you feel passionate about and having it resonate with other people, whether they're the same as you or whether they're different than you. I think that's what it's all about. And, people supporting you in other ways, whether it's messaging you or buying your merch or doing things like that, is just overwhelming, and it just makes you want to continue. Even though you're doing it for yourself, you're doing it as an outlet to maybe keep yourself sane or be creative or just do something, and but then to have other people want to be part of it and want to be on and want to message you and want to share is just amazing. So it's just easy. It's easy when the community comes together and supports it.
You know what type of messages I like a lot? It's when sneakerheads message us and they're like, look, I live here and I don't know a lot of other sneakerheads in my area. So whenever I tune in, it's like I get to conversate, or like they actually do respond while they're listening to the podcast when we have questions. And they're like, well, this way it feels like I have my own crew of sneakerheads. Like, and that what I do isn't weird. It is, but we all like it, so it doesn't matter.
Not the podcasting part, at least.
The podcasting part is super weird. But yeah, those types of message really hit me right in the right here in the feels, because it makes me go like, wow, I don't realize how lucky I am to have these few guys to chit chat with every week and do this. So sometimes we do kind of cater the podcast to like new people. Just try to like, hey, include everyone into the conversation and like make it fun, right?
And I think that like a really good way to round that out is like that comes back to the whole like it humbles you to remember you have an audience kind of idea. Like when people will message you and interact with the things that you said, or you asked somebody like a question, like maybe you just said a listener's name and they replied to you and they had a conversation, like that really reminds you that you're talking to somebody. As much as Sean Collard mentioned, like a lot of the time, even right now, it feels like we're just having a conversation with each other. Like there is still somebody on the other side of the headphones listening, and it's always something to be conscious of. So yeah, definitely. And the whole community aspect of it, like building community, like Chris said, is really big for us at Canada Got Soul. And I think it's just kind of happening for everybody. Like you build a community of listeners, and like the community of listeners is really obviously your bread and butter, but seeing them interact with each other is like just a whole other layer of like unpeeling the onion kind of thing. It's like, yeah, we have the listeners, and the listeners are interacting like, oh yeah, I heard this on True to Size too, like it was so cool. Like, right. Just all of it together is like
those people.
Yeah. we blocked you first, so it doesn't matter.
Right.
We didn't even see you block them because you were already blocked by us. So it's fine. No, go ahead.
Sure. Can I grab the next question?
Yeah, do it.
Oh, sorry. Here, let's do it. So Nick mentioned during the intro that they put us as the first panel because we were polite, right? We're all a bunch of nice Canadians. So anyone can answer this question. Is there competition between the different Canadian sneaker podcasts that we all know about?
I don't know, man. Canada Got Soul. Is there a competition? Probably not. No. Honestly, though,
the sneaker podcast.
No, man. Like, I'll be honest. In terms of the podcasts and all the content creators within Canada, I feel like we're very collaborative. we literally have, like, at least, you know, on True to Size, we've had everyone who's on the screen right now on our show, and vice versa. You know what I mean? So it's like we always try to bring each other up. And in terms of competition, I mean, obviously there's always going to be a little bit of competition, but it's nothing crazy. Unless there's a championship, then we're probably going to go ham. Like, all of us are going to go ham. When there's a podcast awards that Nick Engvall is gonna you know, obviously organize. But yeah, man, I don't know. I find it very, very dope in Canada, to be honest. It's pretty chill.
Yeah, I think sorry, I'm gonna cut you off, Sean, because I'm just gonna cut you off. Well, I was gonna start by saying everyone's been on everyone's podcast, but no one's been on Sean Go's podcast. So that's just the first thing. But
hi, man, starting to be on live.
Anywho, yeah, like, I think the whole thing is that something that we're really proud of, I think, as Canadians and in the Canadian sneakerhead world, is how collaborative we all are. Like Alvin said, like, I think that we all really tackle things as a team. Like, I think that if a brand ever reaches out, they typically reach out to all of us. So you really get like a really widespread like blanket when you throw anything to the Canadian sneaker scene, because we all do work so well together, and there is no real competition. Like, there's no like, Chris isn't gonna not come on the podcast because we're a competitor, quote unquote. There's no competition, but we've already covered that. And like vice versa, like there's none of that, and there's none of like the sneaker podcast did this, so we can't do it, or the sneaker podcast is promoting this, so we can't promote it. Like, I think it's really, as much as it may be a lot of the same content, I think it's the way we all deliver it is all so different that there's no competition, because we're all so different. Like, even just the podcasts that are in this chat, and there's at least 6 more, I want to say, they're all so different, and they all have such a different listener base, just based on the content they create, that there's no need for competition. Aside from us being polite as fuck, there's just no need for the competition. But yeah, go ahead, Sneaker Podcast boys. Tell us why you're subpar.
Well, I was gonna say, in terms of competition, the reason we have a running joke about talking about weather was because we had talked about weather just randomly a couple times. I think, Lawrence, you said something about, oh, they must have run out of material at the Sneaker Podcast because they keep talking about weather. And then we fucking doubled down. We're like, oh yeah, we're gonna talk about weather every fucking podcast.
Yeah.
Well, Nick said the banter at the beginning of their podcast is the most popular thing. So I think you guys ran on that, but maybe took it a little too far.
What? The new guy's taking shots at us.
Shit,
Someone said Alvin took shots at me. I didn't hear that.
Mr.
I don't know
Sneaker
what's
Dad, who
going
has no dads on his show. Go ahead, keep talking.
Is this falling apart now? Are we no longer polite Canadians?
We'll pull it back in when we need to, but this is good.
We're past the halfway point, so anybody who was gonna leave has already left. The guys is over. It's fine.
Right. I've been told I'm not polite in the comments, so I'm ready to go whenever you guys are.
just embrace that, Sean.
Since we don't take turns, I'll mention that I've been on the Sneaker Podcast. Sorry, never. Sorry, I didn't mean that. So I didn't actually mean that. True to Size 4 times or 5 times. And I've had you guys all on, and you guys are all amazing. And not only that, did that help me being on, give me some experience, but like, you know, even Chris was sharing audio tips for me. He was invaluable. I have to thank him. And, you know, we all talk. I think it's safe to say we all talk on a somewhat regular basis. I talk to all you guys probably at least once a week, if not more. And sometimes it's podcast stuff. Sometimes it's saying, hey, I heard you say that. I heard you say this. Or sometimes it's technical help or helping with the podcast or advice and things like that. And, you know, I think that I don't know if that exists elsewhere. I'm sure it does. But I think that, you know, that tight-knit community that we talk about in Canada, I think we're lucky that way. And we have that. We share.
100%, yeah. Like, I feel like Canada's, like I said, it's a really tight knit group. There's not too many of us out there, and we're all friends to some degree, and we all talk to each other frequently.
Some degree.
You know, Lawrence, I don't know about him, but Alvin's cool, John's good. You know, Sean and Chris, yeah. But no, seriously, like we're good. It's just a matter of being mindful of what everyone does. We all have our own style of doing things, and I think just staying in our avenue and being authentic to us, there's no issues to me.
I think that even to the contrary of Chris's question, because I actually forgot what the original question was for a while. I had to refresh it in my mind because we got a little bit off track. But like, I think to the contrary, I think it's I think it's support. Like, there's like an unlimited amount of support just in general within this Canadian sneaker community. Like, I think that we're all really positive. I think maybe it's the humble beginnings of the Canadian sneaker community, of the days where like Nike didn't ship to Canada. We couldn't get Nike ID. There was like 3 stores in Canada that get stuff, and now there's 4 stores in Canada, and they're all in Toronto. Like,
on the way up.
like, I think it's just maybe the humble beginnings where everyone's literally just so supportive, because if you've been in it long enough, like, you know the struggle of being a Canadian sneakerhead, and we could do a whole other panel just on the struggles of being a Canadian sneakerhead. But I think it's like an unlimited amount of support. Like, people do their best to like go out of their way to say good job or congratulations or cool photo or whatever it be. So I think that it's the opposite of competition. I think it's literally just positivity and collaborative feelings all around.
I think it would be more annoying for me to see like a competitor in the field produce like bad content than me having to listen, because I consume too, right? To listen to bad content. Did that make sense?
Yep. You'd be offended if someone was terrible. Yeah.
Exactly. I rather see good content out there, you know?
Yeah.
And then then either we adjust the way we do it to be better or be on par, or, you know, we thief it.
And I think like to that as well, like we're all relatively proud Canadians, some of us prouder than the others, like considering our names, but like I think that you want to see Canada do well at the end of the day. Like I said, we all have the kind of like little brother mentality when it comes to the States, whether we like to admit it or not, whether you're talking being a Raptor fan or sneaker collecting or whatever, or content creation, whatever, you all have that little brother mentality. And I think that we all want to see each other do so well in general, just because we all want to see Canada do well overall. And I see a couple nods, so I guess that you guys agree. But thanks, Sean Collard. Yeah, the aggressive nodding from everybody.
We live in Quebec. We don't talk about anything Canadian.
But you are from Canada at its core.
We are from we are.
Unfortunately for you, but no, I'm kidding. But Chris, did you have anything else you wanted to discuss with that one, or you want us to move on?
Let's move on. We have we have limited time.
Oh my God,
so much more to say.
Didn't even notice that. But let's get on to it then. So do you think that being Canadian plays into the way we produce content? Like, do you think that as a Canadian, you're doing things a different way than other people? And do you think that the content that Canadians are producing is any different than people from around the world? We'll start with probably the most global one here, and we'll kind of work backwards to the least global ones. We'll start with Sean Go. Like, do you think that you produce a certain kind of content because you're Canadian, or do you kind of just like, do you think it kind of looks similar to everybody else?
I think the type of content I make, it's pretty, again, it transcends borders. But I think being Canadian and like being born and raised here, our experiences in the sneaker community in Canada is just so different than down in the States specifically, that it just naturally comes out with the type of stuff that we say and the content we produce.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 100%. And to the second most global people, what about the Sneaker Podcast?
Do you feel I don't think we really tailor make, like, I don't think being Canadian is really in my mindset when we're making a podcast.
No, maybe not in terms of like what we talk about, but I am very aware that there's a lot of opportunity in Canada to work with brands or shops. Right. And in that way, we will maybe unconsciously just talk, about topics.
Over Canadianize it.
Exactly. Or that something that resonates with other fellow Canadians, knowing that people are listening, you know?
Yeah.
And John, I know like your content is like Sean, really transcends borders. There's nothing really Canadian specific about it. But do you find that you're creating content differently because you are from Canada, or does it kind of just come out because it's Sneaker Dads and it's not Canada Got Soul?
Yeah, I don't think it's any different, but I do think things have changed. And thanks to the success of your guys' podcast and Sean on YouTube and everyone's photographs and getting kind of, the sneaker world has changed. Even the boutiques in Canada are getting more recognized globally. And even if you want to attribute it to the Raptors giving Canada more legitimacy, there's a lot of factors that give, Canada a better rep. And I think it's been a long time coming, and I don't think it's anything new, but 20 years ago, we might not have got any attention. We might not have been doing this panel, and we might not have any following or any of the following we do now. But the world is global now. I interviewed someone from Hong Kong the other day. I interviewed people from the U.S. and Canada. So I don't do anything. I don't think differently than I would if I wasn't from Canada. But definitely, I think Canada and its reputation has changed.
Yeah, Alvin, go ahead and jump in, because I'm going to try and tie it into that question we got in the comments down there really quickly and have a 30-second conversation about it, because we don't have a lot of time. But Alvin, go ahead.
I mean, in terms of our pod, like, we definitely don't cater to anyone. Obviously, the way we sound, the places we talk about, the shops we talk about are mainly Canadian. But I mean, we are aware of all the other shops in and around the world, especially because of all the people who...
all the raffles.
All the raffles we try to enter and still lose. All the duties we were willing to pay but don't get because, we don't get them. But it's all good. But at the same time, man, like, because of the other people who listen to our podcast around the world, like, I find that we're really tied into the UK, at least for me anyway, because I interact with a lot of people from the UK because they listen to our podcast. And it's just like, with their stories and the amount of, like, we've had maybe 2 or 3 people from there on our pod as well, and the stories that they've shared. So I mean, I find that it's cool that we're able to share stories from other places, but also still keep it Canadian in a sense.
Yeah, and just to kind of round up the thought, I think that, like, for me at least, whether it be about the podcast or about just content I'm creating in general, like Chris said, I kind of purposely try to Canadianize it, because I feel like it's almost like a little shtick that you can have that not everybody can have. Like, not everybody has weather. Like, it sounds weird to say, but like, if you're from California, you can't take cool shots in the snow or in the rain. Like, you can't do that. So you can't create the same kind of content that we can. So yeah, there's times where, like, you could never tell where I'm from, but when it's December to March, you can very much tell where I'm from. And if you listen to the podcast, I'm sure you can also tell where we're from. But just one of the questions down below that I did want to talk about briefly, and I mean very briefly, was just about brands in Canada. And I think that big brands do care about Canada in the sense that most of them have Canadian market representatives. But I do think that there's a lot of more opportunity to have a more global audience with their eyes on Canada. Like, Toronto and Canada is one of the biggest fastest growing places in the world, has one of the highest qualities of life in the world. A lot of professional athletes and, like, entertainers are coming from here. So we must be doing something right. So I think that there is a lot of opportunity for content creators to get ahead with global brands. But honestly, if you're creating in Canada and in Toronto, I don't want to say it doesn't take a lot, because it does take a lot of work, but the barrier to entry, similar to podcasting, is so much lower than if you were in the States, that you can get brand recognition so much easier if you're from Canada, just because the pool of people who are creating really good content and solid content is a lot smaller than it is in the States. And yeah, you guys can definitely speak on, like, the whole brand thing if you want. We have a couple minutes to talk about it, and then got one more question to wrap it up.
I find that, I mean, for what they can do, the Canadian counterparts of, like, the global brands do their job. Like, they find the right people, or the people that are able to create some content to participate, and to get involved. And it might sound weird, but yeah, people are polite here. So it's like, it's easy to work with brands and shops from my perspective. I don't know if you have the same thoughts, Sean Go, or
Sean. I definitely want to hear Sean Go, how you feel about, like, the whole just, like, Canadian version of creating content, because I know you do get love from a lot of local brands, but you have also gotten love from a lot of international brands as well. Like, how do you think that it differs, and how do you feel that it relates to you being Canadian? Like, do you think you would have a little bit more of a leg up if you were in the States, or would you just kind of fall into the massive ocean of content that is in America?
I think my position's a bit unique, because I really took advantage of being part of the whole Team Roshi movement. So my first brand deal, the first time I worked with a brand was with Finish Line, actually. And that was indirectly through Team Roshi connections. But generally speaking, like, definitely being in Canada, being a Canadian, it's been so much easier just to get that recognition from the brands. Like you said, there's a much smaller pool. So if you do something even remotely, like, even something that remotely stands out from the crowd, chances are some brand's going to notice you and someone's going to take that chance and work with you. And I think I definitely wouldn't be where I am today if I was living down south. That's for sure.
Yeah, 100%. Like just to round it out, unless someone else has something to say, like living in Canada, specifically Toronto, opened so many doors for a lot of creators in Toronto, because when all this got started, when seeding and influencer marketing began, there was nobody to choose from. If we lived in New York, and I'm not even saying this as like a jab, but Sean Go might not even get anything from brands. Like the creators
Sean
there
Go
have
don't get
1.2 million followers, not 40,000 followers, or whatever Sean has, like 40,000 bot followers. I don't know, whatever. Not alleging that. That's different. But yeah, does anyone have anything else about brands before we get into the last question there? Everyone's kind of in the same boat.
Yeah, let's just go.
Yeah.
Last
Okay,
question.
Chris.
So this is one of my favorite questions. What makes for a good podcast?
You.
Oh, well,
my
you know.
Oh my
That's
God.
why where we are. Look at where we are. Sneaker convos, bro.
Sure. Nick
the
Engvall
lead-
makes for a good sneaker podcast.
Facts. I'll say it off the bat. You need some sort of chemistry, man. You got to be able to, just bounce off of each other and just kind of have a feeling of how the other person is. You know what I mean? Like, I find that if we didn't have that, we would sound like our episode 1 for 159 episodes, and that would be horrible. So
Yeah. I think that, like, personally for us, like, and it's interesting because I don't know about you guys. Well, I do know about most of you guys, but like, I'm not personally a podcast listener. So I only know what we create for the most part. Like I'll dabble here and there. If I'm on an episode of John's podcast, I'll listen to it. I listen to Sean's because I listen to Sean Goes because they're 35 seconds long, so they're easy to take in. But we only have like 8 minutes left, so I have to get the rest of the shots in really quickly. But yeah, I think, like, personally, I think it needs to be pretty light. Like, I don't want to be driving in my car and listening to something like super dense and heavy. Like, maybe if I'm laying in a dark room, I want to listen to, like, what is the meaning of life? But overall, and like Sneaker Closet down below said, chemistry is everything. Like, you need to be able to have fun and like coordinate with your co-hosts and everyone else on the podcast, just like this. Like, this was entertaining as hell, and there was minimal planning involved. It just means we're all used to it, and we have good chemistry. So yeah, I think that in the end, it just needs to be well structured, well thought out, and you have to be well prepared. Like, coming from a host, like, if you're not well prepared, the whole thing's going to shit. Like, you need to have an idea of what you're going to talk about that day and be ready to, like, take the conversation wherever it's going to go.
You just said we're not prepared, and then you said you had to be well prepared.
We're not. You need to be well prepared to be not prepared.
Oh, I like that. Yeah.
Natural.
Way with
Go
no
ahead,
way.
natural.
Got it.
Go
I got it.
Yes, exactly. You need to know you're not going to have a way.
Exactly.
I think
Anyone
Chris,
else
what about
want to
you?
add something?
I want to know what Chris thinks.
Well, I like when people can tell me something I don't know. Right. Something that interests me or that piques my curiosity. If you're showing me what everyone else is already doing or just a different version of the same question, then I might tune in for a little bit, but then I'll tune out. So it's good to have the basic questions in there, but it's also good to find your own path. Like Lawrence mentioned, we do have a lot of podcasts in Canada, but they all have their own distinct path, right? I don't know, Sean Collar, do you have thoughts on this?
I think. Well, I mean, we've nothing that different than you guys have said already. I think chemistry, like we've kind of come full circle. Like chemistry is for me the main thing. If you could be as well prepared as you want to be, but if that chemistry is not there, it's going to get sort of tedious to listen to because it's going to be like sort of a question answer kind of a vibe to it. So I think I don't know in terms of someone who's doing a solo podcast how chemistry comes into play, but as a group, to me, chemistry is everything.
Yourself.
Yeah,
But
that's right.
I think John has to manufacture chemistry on the spot with his guests, so
which is hard, really hard.
Yeah.
Well, in terms of preparation, I think it's important to be prepared yourself as a host or hosts, but it's also important to prepare your guests. I've, in my case, I've had guests who've never been on podcasts before, maybe even reluctant to be on. And so far it's been really good. And I want to prepare them sometimes I haven't listened to more than an episode. I tell them to listen to an episode. Thank you for listening, Lawrence. To understand what I'm looking for and to tell them what you're looking for so they are prepared. So you don't have to, number one, struggle and push it and force it, because people can hear when it sounds that. It also makes for a terrible editing task if you're cutting out half of the podcast because it's boring or the person's mumbling or doesn't want to answer the questions. I ask people what they're prepared to talk about, what they're not prepared to talk about. But in addition to what Chris said, and I think it's along the same lines, is compelling storytelling, getting people to talk about what they're passionate about, and we jumping all the way back to the sort of overarching theme is just honesty and people being straightforward and not trying to be something that they're not. I think it goes a long way.
Cool.
Sean Go. We got to get Sean Go. What makes for a good podcast? The newest one to the podcast realm. What do you think goes into a good podcast there, newbie?
Well, Rook. Well, my situation's a bit unique because I usually run by myself, so it's just me talking to myself. I think though the audience, that the people that tune in, they really care to hear what I have to say. And like Chris said, offering something that's different than what I normally do. Because my videos on YouTube, I don't really give too much of a opinion per se.
They're structured.
Right. They're structured in a way that where I'm going to review the shoes objectively. But the podcast gives me that avenue of where I can just really talk about what I'm thinking about whatever subject. Right. So it's good. It gives me that second avenue just to be myself and just throw out my thoughts.
Yeah.
Real quick before Chris throws us out, anybody listening right now, anybody watching live, can you take a really cool screenshot of us so we can post this later? Because we have a weird thing over our screen, and we're like reversed too, which is also throwing me off. Like when I tell, but anyways, can someone take a screenshot? Like we're gonna do a pose real quick, so someone can take a screenshot and then we can have it. Just send it to us, please. 3, 2, 1. All right, thanks. So just DM that to me. Thanks. All right,
no one took a picture.
Yeah, no one took a screenshot. No one did it.
That's how we've chosen to end this podcast.
Yeah.
Please take a picture of us.
Sean, get your phone down. Go ahead. Please, Chris, end this. This needs to end.
Yes.
It's overdue.
So I want to thank everyone for joining us and taking your time. Please, if you will, guys, let the people know where they can find you on the socials. Let's go with Sean Go.
You can find me on YouTube at youtube.com/SeanGo, Instagram at SGO8, and my new podcast, the Channel 8 Podcast.
Very new. It's really new.
Alvin?
You can find me at Mr. Q Mart. You can also find me on YouTube at Canada Got Soul. And then you can also find us on True to Size.
John
Ratner on Twitter, Heads Ain't Ready on Instagram, and Sneaker Dads on all the platforms.
Perfect. Lawrence?
It's Lawrence Hopkins. You can find me at LDoggyStyles on Instagram, Woof. You can also find me on the True to Size podcast, youtube.com/CanadaGotSoul and CanadaGotSoul.ca.
And Mr. Sean Collard?
At SCollard23, at OG Support Group, and the Sneaker Podcast on all platforms.
You can find myself at Christopher.Chu, also on the Sneaker Podcast, also on Traffic Boys with Alvin there. That's another podcast. Be sure to download and listen to, I'm going to name the podcasts again. There's the Channel 8 podcast with Sean Go, True to Size podcast by Canada Got Soul. That's Lawrence and Alvin. Sneaker Dads with Mr. John Ratner. The Sneaker Podcast with Sean Collard, myself, and the rest of the crew. You can find all our podcasts anywhere where podcasts are broadcast. Big thanks to Nick and Joe. Nick with the Sneaker History Podcast, and everyone involved in Sneaker Convos. Be sure to stay locked to the live stream from March 16th to 20. You can access it at twitch.com/sneakerhistory or youtube.com/sneakerhistory. Right after us, you can join Nick and Joe for a fireside chat at 8:15 p.m. Eastern. They will also intro different panels and panelists. One love, all the sneakers. Peace.
Peace.
I don't think this closes, so people are probably still watching.
Shout out to all the
Someone
homies
end it,
in the-
please.
all the homies are watching.
Thanks.